So the first minute is like a little intro song and everything. So we just kind of just pretend like we're talking without really saying anything.
Okay. Yeah. That lens.
4, 3, 2.
San Antonio! Welcome to All Things San Antonio podcast. Today is Real Estate Edition, where we dive into all things real estate. We got your host, Brad Burns, and
Ken Carter, and we're here with.
Drew Kohlmeyer.
Thank you very much for stepping in today.
Yeah, for sure.
He's our resident expert. We everything's in quotation marks around here. He's also been gracious enough to help us with our podcast. Podcast studios here at his office here at Thrive Mortgage, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for stepping in on late notice.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. Yeah.
what's going on in the mortgage world?
I mean, things are picking up, man. Year started a little slowish, but things are banging. We're seeing a couple multiple offer situations, and going into the summer, it's gonna be a good spring summer. Even with Jerome Powell talking the other day and blah blah blah, we're not gonna do this rate cut in March, and things are still good, and rates are fairly stable for the most part, and just exciting to get people into homes, and we're even seeing some refis come through. So
Yeah. Are y'all thinking that the rate cuts are definitely coming way later in the year?
They will be. I mean, they're timid on overcorrection. That's what he talks about all the time. We don't want to overcorrect and get into stagflation and that kind of stuff. And so I expect we'll get one this summer. We'll get one or two later in the year. I mean, I definitely think rates are coming down. They're not going to. We will never see threes again in our lifetime, like just a normal three. You've got buy downs and all that kind of stuff, but kind of a normal par three we won't ever see again, right? It was artificially deflated, and now we're back to the realistic. You look historically, and we're still below average historically, and so I think we'll get into the fives somewhere ultimately by the end of the year. I mean, early next year. But the fact of the matter is, you can always refi, but you cannot, if you're overpaying for a house, which is what is going to happen when the market corrects, you can't refi that lack of equity that but you can always buy now and very cheaply a year from now refinance and use the equity that you got in the house and where it's at that point, and turn it into a really good mortgage for you. So there's lots of opportunity. I think people that are on the fence thinking that we're going to get a bubble in San Antonio, it's just not going to happen, man.
Yeah, I agree. I see the same thing. We're seeing already from our side of it an influx of buyers from all different sources that we're talking to. And exactly what you're saying is like not getting that equity that they would have gotten. I think we're real close. We're not at the bottom of where our market is. We're really super close. I just had a client of mine, a friend of mine actually, that moved down from Austin, that he got in $10,000 under the appraised value, plus he got $10,000 in concessions. Yeah. So he basically got the house for $20,000 less than the value is, because there's with sellers right now, their homes have sat on the market for a long time, and now that the buyers are starting to come back in, we're going to start seeing some of that inventory move. But the ones that are getting them right now, it's going to be kind of like the guys that bought it right before everything went up before. Yeah. There's a good chance to buy now, get it below value potentially. Not every case is going to happen that way. It depends on the area, but there's real possibility to capture equity right away.
Yeah, I mean, and just like the stock market, everyone's like, well, don't catch a falling knife, right? But you want to wait for it to bounce off the ground and get back in your hand when it's all the way up here? I don't think so, right? And so there's really, unless you're just a genius, you cannot time the stock market absolutely perfectly, and you can't time buying a house. And right now, it is really a great time to get the best of both worlds. We got interest rates, going down. It's still, our market is still very affordable considering what's going on in the rest of the nation and everything else. And mortgages are really not supposed to be permanent, man. There's always going to be an opportunity to refinance for one way or another, but you can't miss out on getting the house that you want and an equity position too. Like you mentioned, we had one the other day. They got 80 grand of equity at a 320 sales price or something. It's ridiculous, right? And with kind of average what a family's making in San Antonio, you will never be able to make enough to save $80,000 for the most part, right? I mean, we've got inflation, we've got everything else going on, but getting that $80,000 on a purchase and you not having to put down much in order to get it, it's kind of ridiculous. That's why it's the easiest path to wealth is home ownership, and it always will be.
When it's like I'm talking with a client now that they were in a position where they actually lost their house during COVID. He got furloughed. They weren't able to maintain the payments. They ended up selling it, so they didn't lose all their equity then. And they've been renting, and their whole process has been to get to their own home again as soon as possible. And they've done everything with going through that process. He's got a great job. He's got great credit. The one thing they don't have necessarily is a lot of money, and especially when it comes to making sure that they pay for the closing cost and all of this stuff and little bits of things and paying for your insurance for the next year and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So the sellers again are in a position where they're willing to take that upon themselves and pay for that out of the equity of their house just because they need to find a buyer at this point.
Right. I mean, and there's options. There's DPA. Obviously, we've got VA loans. We don't charge lender fees there because we're very big proponents of the military and especially how important that is for San Antonio, being Military City, USA. But without talking to someone, you don't know your options, and all you're doing is just reading something on one of the news sources that doesn't really even apply to you, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times should I save up 20%? No, you don't. You can't. It'll put you in a good position in some ways. You don't have to do anything, and you might as well do it now and then make a principal reduction. You'll be in the same place or a recast or get your MI off or whatever the situation is. And that's why you need to talk to a strong realtor. You need to talk to a good lender that'll give you the option, show you everything. If I'm putting down 3.5% or 5% or 10%, 20%, or if we're doing DPA or, any of these kind of products. And so, but just trying to be kind of your own advisor never really works out well for anybody. I mean, you try that on YouTube, you're going to be 12 hours later, you're going to be through your YouTube black hole and you learned everything about rabbits you ever could, but you learned nothing that applies to actually a goal of yours, right? Absolutely. I'm guilty of it myself. I get in bed and I'm just doing something, and then literally 4 hours later, I'm like, what happened? Why am I now watching this thing about, kangaroos and how, blah, 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 right? It's just talk to an advisor, learn the best way to accomplish your goals. And that applies to not only mortgages, but finances in general.
I think one of the biggest things is people are so used to using the internet. When's the last time that you went on WebMD and diagnosed yourself with an illness?
Yeah.
And everything you look up on WebMD is you have cancer and you have 3 months to live, no matter if it's just a cold. It's kind of the same thing. People are self-diagnosing themselves out of purchasing a home when they can qualify and don't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hypochondria, right? I mean, and everyone seems to be a great advisor around you, but no one's ever done it for anybody but themselves, right? And at a different time. Well, 4 years ago, I got, 3 point. Okay, well, that's nice. But what happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Like, talk to your parents. Like, it's very different. Everything. The market doesn't move fast, but it does move fast, right? And time seems to fly, and so just talk to people that know what they're talking about, please. Just it will save you so much money in the long run and put you on a path to actual significant generational wealth. You know, I mean, that's where the majority of generational wealth comes from. It does not come from winning the lottery. It doesn't come from a car wreck or Thomas J. Henry taking care of you for $40 million or whatever it is, right?
Winning a World Series of Poker event.
Yeah, exactly, right? Or buying crypto when it was 1 cent and then it went to 20 cents or whatever the situation
Close to
is.
70,000 right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are some smart people out there that did it the right way and are crypto millionaires, but for the majority of the people, that's not the path for you to somehow be a millionaire. Right. And so let's get you on that path and have this as part of one thing that you do. Maybe you also invest in the stock market. Maybe you also invest in crypto. Maybe you buy lotto tickets. I don't know. I'm not suggesting that's a path to wealth at all, but you know, it's just it's a great time actually. The energy in the market is very much picking up, and it's time to go talk to someone, get pre-qualified, and start looking at a house and put yourself.
Let me get your opinion on kind of going away from like the single family home, the individual going to buy the house and everything. I saw an article the other day that we're coming into a spot where there's more homes that are owned by the baby boom generation, the boomers, our parents' generation, that they haven't taken care of them, right? They have not, and that's the reason why most homes get to a distressed position. It's not because people don't care. It's just they don't have the money to really maintain a home. It gets
or
expensive
probate.
a lot of times.
You know, there's a lot of that.
Or probate. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so we're about to come into a point where we have really not enough new homes being built every year. There's only, I can think, 1 million being built every year, where we need, I think, 10x that probably. But there's, in the next 10 years, there's just going to be a plethora of, word of the day, plethora, a whole lot of homes coming on the
Someone
market.
got a thesaurus. That's nice.
You know what? You put that in my head because before we got on here, you said something about thesaurus too.
Yeah, I know. And you were like, thesaurus? Is that like, is that a dinosaur or, you know?
He's like, what's the biggest word that I can bring up and sound smart? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you
But that was
accomplished
good.
it. I
That was
was
great.
proud. I was proud of you.
There you
for
go.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but go no. What do you, like? I know that you do a lot of investing and everything. Like, what do you see as big opportunities, if any, in the next, say, 2 to 5 years?
I mean, like you said, there's distressed properties. That's always a good way. I mean, you're not going to be able to. They do have auctions on the courthouse steps and stuff, but you're not going to go in and get a house for $5,000, you know, unless you want to go to Detroit. Like Detroit
what I
has
saw
lots
on
of
TikTok.
$5,000. They will pay you to buy a house in some of the areas of Detroit and other things to try and revitalize the area, and it's a great thing that they're doing. However, we do have like renovation loans. I mean, the house doesn't have to be perfect right now, you know, and so that's why. Sometimes I tell realtors, like, you showed them top, very, very top of market. What did you do as the first house? I'm like, don't show them top of market on the first house, right? And so because you want to look at options and you want to realize that maybe it's not perfect for me right now, but I can do a little bit of rehab. And we have renovation loans where you can do it, buy it and rehab at the same time. You know, these are for owner occupied, obviously not for flips or anything like that, right? But
that is a great way to get into a home with equity right away. If you're
and sweat equity, there is something to be said about making something yours, right?
Yep.
And decorating it and just doing something, and that's part of the fun part of buying a house too, because you can't do it. You're in an apartment, you know. They're going to tax the hell out of you when you leave if you paint it any kind of color but whatever they have, which is boring. You know, gray or whatever, or beige or whatever they have in there.
color of the day.
The color of the day, but you can do whatever you want. And you can make your mistakes on, I had a bright green wall and now I don't want it. Well, then paint it, right? And make it a new room. You know, do something else with it. You can't do that when you're renting.
When we had our kids were little, we had the chalkboard wall, which is probably the best thing in the world. Giving them one wall where they could just go crazy.
Go to town. Yeah, exactly. And then in addition, and I know you know a lot about this, about the multi-unit kind of stuff, right? That's always a good way to get in, and you can be a landlord for 1 or 2 units. They're connected to your house, easy to maintain. Water goes out, you probably already know, right? And you can go over there and the doorbell needs to be fixed. Well, you go over there with the screwdriver and you fix it for them, right? So it's a good way to get in, and with various products with FHA and VA specifically, and then now some conventional, you can get in with as little as 3.5% down on an FHA and have a multi-unit
With
and
VA
be a
the same.
landlord.
VA.
VA's the same, yeah. So I mean, VA would be 0%.
Yeah.
But there's some rules that you have to abide by for guidelines on qualifying and that kind of stuff. But it's definitely something that you can do, and it's fun to start that kind of investing. If you're interested and you watch, about the Cardones and everyone else that talk about more doors, get more doors, right? It's the easiest way to start. And some of these guys, that's exactly what they did. They started with getting a duplex, and then they moved into a fourplex, and then all of a sudden they've got 10 doors and 3 properties, and they've got real cash flow coming in every month, and that just explodes from there, especially when equity multiplies with multi-unit, kind of properties, right? And so that's definitely a way to get in and everything else. But I can't say it enough. Just start the conversation. There's no good time to do something that's uncomfortable, but that's why you talk to people that make it comfortable for you, right? Through experience and through talking in your language and everything else. So.
And when you buy a duplex or a multifamily with an FHA loan, owner occupied, you can qualify for more because you can use those rents to help offset your payment.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a little bit tricky when you're talking about 3 units plus. However, absolutely, yeah, you can use those rent rolls to qualify, and it does significantly help your ability to qualify for a home. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't be here more, but just
No,
me
we'll
on.
have you-
And
we'll have
especially
you
when
back.
you're having this is the easy stuff for me. I've been doing this so long. Like, I want the hard stuff, like who's got the best tacos in town. That's what I want to be a part of or whatever, right? I mean, my blood, there's salsa in my blood. I'm telling you, I was born and raised here, and I'm a lot older than I look. Thank you very much.
Well, you brought it up.
And the camera, too, thank you. Thank you for your help as well.
So it's if I ask what your favorite taco place is, can you name them? Do you have one in mind, or do you have?
It just kind of like the feeling like in the morning. Now, if we're talking like a trash can kind of taco, I like Los Garros. That's over in Stone Oak.
I think it's pronounced Huetos, but
okay. Well, I mean,
In Stone Oak, it might be.
yeah,
There's
I don't know
Stone
how
Oak
the
is
lighting.
Garros.
I don't know how the lighting in is, but if the lights are on, you know exactly why I misspelled or mispronounced it, right? All right. How dare you?
but their trash can tacos is legit. Like it's a great it's a great taco.
But street taco.
But you already broke the
Yeah.
Brad's number one rule is you can't mention a best taco in San Antonio and
North of
already
90.
started. He's
no,
north of
absolutely.
1604. He's north of 1604 with this
Yeah,
one.
but I'm
It's
like my
That's why it
lunches
was
and breakfasts
gyros.
are within like
Gyros.
5 miles of my office for the most part, right? During the week, I'm working hard. I'm here, so that means I only got Stone Oak Plus to go to, and these are the places that I go regularly. However, I accept that as a challenge, and I believe you're going to be taking me to one of your better choices there. So
Well, we can go to one
of
of my go-to favorite like breakfast taco places at this point is actually S.A. Card House.
Oh yeah, I mean they're not
not bad little
They're
taco.
pretty
and
good.
it's-
Yeah,
and
that's a pretty good restaurant overall.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the middle of it and you're just like, I need substance. It's really good.
potato egg taco.
Yeah,
And the tortillas are
absolutely.
great. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Oh, no,
it's
they
not
are.
what you expect.
Yeah, Wiz does a good job over there for sure. But all right, boys. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. We'll see you later.
Absolutely.
And we're back.
We just want to thank Drew for the great knowledge information, market information that he dropped on us.
Absolutely. I really appreciate him coming by and talking with us. So today's episode is really going to be about real estate, like we said at the beginning. And so something that we don't talk about a lot is really about us and our team. This is focused on San Antonio, but we wanted to go a little bit deeper into, because there is a lot of new buyers in the market. Really, this is kind of what prompted me to think about wanting to have this podcast be about real estate. Is we're seeing a lot more action from a buyer side. And so there's a lot of new buyers that may not have gone through this process before, know what's going on from a mortgage standpoint, what their options are, even if they want to go in again buying something that's distressed so they can gain some equity right away as soon as they finish their rehabbing things. But I wanted to go ahead. I wanted to have you kind of go through the process that we go through with our buyers, because it's pretty extensive. We've got a whole team behind every transaction. It's not just the single agent. It's not just me when I'm working with either a buyer or a seller. It's a team behind us. but we've really have a whole system that we've developed, that you've developed. That's one of the reasons why I joined your team. Well, as Delilah, Delilah has put together. But take us through that process of what it looks like as a first-time home buyer that has no idea what they want to do. They just know, I'm tired of paying rent, tired of paying someone else's mortgage. I want to pay my mortgage. I want to gain equity.
Yeah. So first of all, it all starts off from people just like you watching this, referring us to your friends and your family, and reaching out to us to buy, sell, and invest. So that's where it first starts off at. From there, one of the things that we always do is we always really want to sit down on the buy side and have a strong consultation to help people realize, like, is it the right time to buy or not? It's not the right time to buy for everybody. It might be a terrible time for you to buy. And ultimately, when we go through that process, and if we realize, like, hey, this might not be your best interest to do, we'll let you know. And I think that's one of the most important things about it. Like, I've go to so many listing appointments, and I'll tell them, like, hey, don't sell your house. Keep it. I'm a fan of keeping all the real estate we can keep. If you have any means of keeping that property and buying the next one, there's ways to work around it. There's ways to do it. Let's keep that one.
It's funny that you say that because, excuse me, I have a really good friend of mine that his parents are of the age of trying to, they either need to downsize, need to do something. Their masters are upstairs, and it's a 2-story home. It's difficult to walk up and stairs up and down all the time and everything. So they're wanting to downsize. They don't need to sell their house though. Like to buy another house, they're in a great position to buy another house. They've done well for themselves and saving and stuff like that. And that's the advice. It's like, why give up this house, this profit, this business that produces income that can be income for their children when they're even gone, or income for them now, and buy something and keep moving forward. It's not necessarily the best. It's not the right thing for them to necessarily to sell something.
Yeah, and that's on the sell side. But even on the buy side, the lady you were working with here a couple months ago,
yes,
it turned out better. It wasn't, her best interest wasn't to purchase.
She had nobody to gain equity for. She had no she was, I think, 81, 82, something like that. And she ended up getting in an apartment, a senior living type apartment, not an assisted living, but one of those communities that has all the functions that she can go to with little Miss Foxy, her dog, and everything, and yeah, move into that. And because again, if she gains equity, it's going to go to no one at this point, and so it wouldn't have been a great thing for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing that she's going to be able to live out in an apartment, be able to socialize a little bit more, be able to get some help.
She'll have a community of people to interact with.
Yeah.
It'll probably keep her around longer than
for sure.
if
I think
she had a single family home by herself.
Yeah, no, definitely. So first we want to decide, is it a good time for you to buy? From there, we have a step-by-step buyer consultation that we go through. And that one consists of about 5 or 6 steps. The first one is we talk about the pre-approval. And what does it look like getting pre-approved if you're not paying cash? People that are paying cash somehow get offended when you ask them if they're going to get approved for a loan. But if you're not paying cash, what does it look like to get pre-approved? What does the pre-approval do?
And let's go back to that for a second as we go through this. If you have the cash to buy a home, it's still the right thing to do is to get a loan, and for that property, and pay that mortgage payment, and use that cash for something else, like buying a multifamily, like buying more investment property that could then in turn make you your mortgage payment. In other words, it could possibly, again, depends on the numbers, right? But it could be potentially pay your mortgage, and now you've got two equitable items and more assets.
And it's not even about just buying investment properties and things like that. If you want to go the Dave Ramsey route and invest in stocks or invest in the S&P 500 with the 12% annual return over history, mortgage rates are 5, 6, 7%. If you get 12% on your money, where's the best place to put it?
I think it's best to put it in real estate.
I think so too, because you get cash flow and appreciation.
Yep.
But not everybody wants to be a landlord.
That's true. I get caught up in that all the time
Yeah.
because I think it's the route that I take. So it's
Yeah, but it's not right for everybody.
not right for everybody.
I know people that are in the real estate field that have bought investment properties and they say, hey, I'm done being a landlord. I don't want to be a landlord. This is too stressful. I don't have to worry about toilets backing up. I don't have to worry about none of that. So then we find different routes for them to invest and do that. So step one is, what does it look like to get pre-approved or figure out if you're paying cash, figure out the financing side of it. Step two is finding that perfect house. So we go over an in-depth, we have a worksheet that we go off of where we talk about the must-haves, the things they would like to have, and the deal breakers. So some people, if it has a pool, it's an absolute deal breaker. They don't have to deal with the pool. Some people, if it doesn't have a back patio, they don't want it.
Some people to school district.
Yeah, some people to school
never
district.
want a kid and they don't care.
So it really just diving in and customizing that search for them. Because ultimately, it's not about showing you 20, 30, 40 houses. Because there's really probably 5 or 6 that are going to really fit their needs.
Yeah.
And our job's just about eliminating all the stuff that doesn't work, so we show them the best of the best. And the only way we can do that is if we slow things down on that front end, really dive in on what they're looking for, get on the same page as them, so we can see it as clearly as they do. So we got the first step was the pre-approval. The second step is the house.
Diving in their needs.
Diving
their
into
wants.
the needs and the wants. Third step, once you go under contract, what happens?
Well, then we got to get it inspected. We've got there's
Yeah,
a
then
whole
you
lot
have the
of stuff
inspection, you have the
that's
appraisal.
That's where the fun just begins.
Yeah. So it's easy to find the house.
That's
so you
the
have the
fun
inspection, the appraisal, this, that. Same thing with people going out and buying new construction homes without an agent.
Yeah.
That can be a huge problem for you. Not saying that the builder reps are bad people, but ultimately they work for the builders. I know some great builder reps.
We just had a conversation with a buddy that had an experience where prior to him becoming a licensed agent and stuff like that, but he didn't get it inspected through the process, and that's where a lot of people think that, like, I'm buying a brand new build, I don't have to get it inspected, but it's just as important, if not more important, to go through and make sure that you have it inspected. And there's inspection companies that they do that specifically, where they have a new home build inspection product, if you will, that they go periodically based on different milestones of the home being completed.
We had one we terminated this week on a new construction one. The inspector went in. There was the ceilings were bowed a little bit. There was different things like that. And the buyer was like, oh, no. Like, you can't fix this.
Can't fix that.
So, you probably can fix it, but it'd be a big thing. And we don't want to deal with that.
I think I heard part of that inspection call.
Yeah. So we terminated that one. We're going to go out and find them something else. But what would have happened if they didn't have an agent? They would have probably got pressured into, the new construction manager would have thought, oh, no, this is normal. You're just looking at it from the wrong angle, whatever that might be, to where we can kind of break that down and really find out, is that the case? So on purchasing a home, once we go under contract, the next step is getting an inspection scheduled. We always recommend hiring a third-party inspector. Some of the great ones that we've been using is HHI, Brian and Brian Home Inspections, Dream Team with Rafael Diaz. He has a smaller company than the other two. And Steve Tennyson. Like, there's a ton of great inspectors out here. If I didn't name you, I'm sorry. But there's a ton of great inspectors out here that are third-party inspectors. They don't work for me. They don't work for the builder. They don't work for the seller. They work for the buyer.
The buyer. And what's great is they all will work differently and everything, but some of those will take payment at the closing. So buyers that are a little bit limited on cash on the upfront, first-time home buyers have saved as much as they could for their down payment, they'll take that payment on the back end once the closing comes.
Yeah.
And if we can get concessions from the sellers,
It'll
then
cover
it'll help cover that.
Yeah. So we go through the inspection. With the inspection on a pre-owned, we're looking at the big 5 things. And I always make my hand. I learned this a long time ago. So the big 5 things, which is foundation, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and then you got the roof right here kind of coming up sideways. So those are the big 5 things we're really looking for on a home inspection. on a pre-owned home, because those are usually the most expensive things to get fixed, and everything else is usually pretty cosmetic. So we want to make sure that those 5 major systems are in good working order for the clients.
And one of the things that I talk to my clients about, and tell me what you think. I don't know if we've talked about this specifically, but whenever we're making that initial offer with a buyer, we see all the cosmetic things, right? So we see these things, those 5 things, the mechanical aspects, the most important things. Those are the things that we can't see. And even an inspector can only see potential of something, and it's always a licensed tradesmen within those fields that are ultimately the best judge of those things. But we can see the cosmetic stuff and everything. So I tell them we need to make an offer that is based on that, and then once the inspection report comes back, then we can focus on those main things, because what we want to do is we want a smooth transaction that. And this seems crazy in this world, but I like to make a fair offer that's fair to my client for sure and fair to them. If we can if we can gain some equity like we've done with some other clients, for sure we're going to do that. But we want to make sure that we're starting at a fair point, and then if we can negotiate down from there, even better.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing too that I'm a big proponent of is if you're walking a property and you're like, hey, I want this fixed, let's negotiate that up front.
Yeah.
So if there's a broken window walking in the house, let's put that in the contract and the initial offer. Hey, we want to buy this house for this price with these terms, as long as you fix this window. Mm-hmm. And then that's not including getting it inspected and negotiating repairs from there. So once you get the repairs negotiated, it's on to the appraisal. So the lender will send out a third-party appraiser to prove what the home is worth. And it's going to protect you from paying more than the home is worth, unless that's already adjusted for up front. So during COVID, we had appraisal gap addendums and things like that. So where if a home was selling for more than it was appraised for, buyers were paying more than the houses were worth, or paying more than they were appraised for. Because something's only worth what somebody will pay for it. So it's not more than it was worth, but it was more than what it was appraised for.
Correct. Because now those houses... A lot of those houses, from that top price, we were looking at market values from August 23 from 2022 from year over year. So it's about 4 or 5 months old. But in a lot of San Antonio, home prices went up 1%, went up 2%, they went down 2%. There was a couple of zip codes that had some bigger drops, 5%, 6%. But for most of San Antonio, you didn't get that. You didn't get a big drop in those values. And again, and now, earlier, with buyers coming back, those values will come right back up.
We're not like other cities. So Austin took a real big hit.
Big hit, 15-20% in some areas.
Yeah, I talked to a hard money lender. They lend all over Texas, and he said, we lend everywhere in the triangle. And I was like, where does Austin fall on the triangle? I asked him. So San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. He said, we don't lend in Austin. We made that decision when the housing market started going crazy. We knew that it was going to come down at some point, and we didn't want to have a bunch of money lent out on properties we have to take back.
Smart.
Yeah, it is. So the lender sends a third-party appraiser out.
And just to reiterate on this, it's the lender's not sending someone that they're hiring. This is it's paid for by the bank and everything, but it's assigned by, I think, the Texas Real Estate Commission, but it's not,
Well, there's an appraisal management company.
That's what it is.
And so the lender does is the lender sets up the appraisal. Some lenders, the buyers have to pay for the appraisal up front. Some of them will let them pay at closing, just depending on the lender. And they reach out to the appraisal management company. The appraisal management company will assign an appraiser on it.
Right.
And then it'll go through like that. So once we figure out that the house is worth what it's worth, ideally it's worth, or the appraisal comes in higher than what we're under contract for. And sometimes the appraiser is going to ask for some repairs to be done. We had one just recently. There was some wood rot around the top fascia board near the top of the house, some peeling paint and things like that. And the appraiser wanted us to hit that. So we had contractor go out, knock that out, and we closed. So there might be things saying, hey, the house is worth $300,000, you're paying $280,000, but it's only worth $300,000 if you paint this peeling paint.
Right. And depending on the type of loan, VA and FHA have more stringent requirements in a lot of those in regards. One of the very first listings I ever took had like laminate cupboards and everything. So it was just plastic on particle board, if you will, and it was chipping. And I literally had to go down. I went out and I got it, scraped everything off. I sent a picture. This is on the day of closing because they needed proof that that paint wasn't peeling anymore. And so yeah, I was out there on.
Yeah, and you say stringent. I'll tell you, most of the time there's a bad rap for VA loans. A lot of people think that you have to do a bunch of work to the property and things like that for it to qualify for VA. That's not the case. They just want it to be livable.
Absolutely.
They don't want it to have a broken window. They want the veteran to be safe. They don't want it to have peeling paint to where somebody can come eat paint and get sick or whatever. They want it to be a livable house. They're not super stringent. There's not anything crazy with it. There just are things that they'll hit on.
It makes sense. I mean, these are government-backed loans that the government wants to make some assurances that 3 years from now, that tree limb that was touching the roof line hasn't caused termites, and now the house is worth a lot less.
Yeah.
So for sure, it's nothing that is unreasonable.
Yeah. So they're gonna ask for something. They might ask for things like that. They'll verify that the price you're paying for it, that it's worth. And then from there is the fun part. That's when we go to closing. That's when you get to invite us over for the barbecue.
There you go.
And that sums up the home buying process. Like there's a few more steps in the way. We'll dive further into it. But ultimately, that's the home buying process, the process we take our clients through and help them achieve that goal of home ownership. I know we were talking a little bit earlier about some buying multifamily with FHA loans and with loans where you're not having to put as much money down because you're going to own or occupy it. We have a gentleman that's in the process of purchasing a home right now, a duplex. It was listed for $220,000. Pretty nice duplex. Like, I mean, it wasn't perfect. Listed for $220,000. It was multiple offers, so we offered $240,000.
Okay.
And it appraised at $255,000.
There you go.
So he's walking in with $15,000 in equity. Plus, I think we're getting $7,000 in closing cost assistance. So he's literally getting $20-something thousand off the price, buying it for 3.5% down, and establishing his family for generational wealth.
That's amazing. And that's the goal that I have, and what I like working with people is helping them achieve those same things, those same goals and everything.
I wish I would have went back. Like if I look at it now, I wish I would have went back and bought a duplex or a fourplex for my first property. Even if I lived there a year, 2 years, and then moved out, and then I would have had a multifamily in my portfolio. Can't go back and do it.
But you already had a family. You're just like you weren't ready to move into a multifamily with your family.
I'm not picky. It's my wife. We were driving around, and I was like, "Would you live here?" And she kind of made a face. I was like, "You're so bougie." And then we drove a little bit further, and she was like, "Would you live here?" And I kind of made the face. And she was like, "You talk about me." But I was like, I don't spend a ton of time at home. Like, I'm always on the go. I'm always getting other people home so they can spend time at home. So I'm not picky where I live.
Yeah.
I mean, I could live in an apartment or something. I mean, I'd be okay with it.
I could live in an apartment at the Pearl.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that wraps up this edition of All Things San Antonio Real Estate Edition. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. We're happy to ask them. Direct message us also. But like and subscribe, share with your friends and family if they have questions about the home buying process. We'd happy to help them out.
We'll see y'all later.